They always say new beginnings start with hope. But in my case, it started with intimidation. Fake uniforms, bogus authority, and a gun in the wrong hands. What that man didn't know was that the moment he pointed it at my daughter, he crossed a line he could never walk back from, because my daughter isn't just anyone. She's an FBI tactical commander. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment telling me what country you're watching from. I want to see how far this one travels. My name is Michael Harris. After my wife passed away, I decided to move somewhere quieter. Somewhere I thought would give me and my daughter Emily a chance to heal. Oak Ridge Meadows looked perfect on paper. Gated entrance, tidy lawns, a friendly clubhouse with coffee mornings. But behind the trimmed hedges and smiling neighbors, the HOA was rotten to the core. It started small. Petty rules. Trash cans not allowed outside before 7 a.m. Curtains had to be beige. Garden decorations must reflect neighborhood harmony. Absurd, but manageable. What wasn't manageable was the woman running it all. Brenda Lawson, HOA president. A woman who spoke like she owned the entire community. And maybe in her mind she did. Brenda's meetings felt less like neighborhood gatherings and more like royal decrees. She always had someone standing behind her, a man built like a linebacker, with a shaved head and tattoos crawling up his neck. His name was Victor. He wasn't a deputy, wasn't licensed security, just muscle with a black vest that had HOA enforcement, stitched on the front in crooked letters. From the first day I saw him, something in my gut turned. A man like that, walking around with authority he hadn't earned, was a problem waiting to explode. And explode it did. Victor strutted through the neighborhood like a self-appointed sheriff. He pounded on doors, waved violation slips, and even threatened to tow cars from driveways. People were scared, even when they knew his authority was fake. That vest and Brenda's backing were enough to keep everyone silent. The first time Victor came to my door, I was trimming the hedges. He stomped up my walkway, sunglasses covering half his face, clipboard in hand. "You're out of compliance," he said flatly. I looked at him. "For what? Cutting my own bushes? Your mailbox is half an inch too tall. Adjust it by next week or you'll regret it." I laughed, thinking he was joking. But his tone never wavered. He tapped the side of his vest like it meant something. Rules are rules. I wanted to tell him to shove his clipboard where the sun doesn't shine. But Emily stopped me. She'd just moved back home after years of being away. At first, she was quiet about what she'd been doing, but I could tell from her posture, her eyes, her calmness. She wasn't just living an ordinary life. That day, she just said, "Dad, let it go. For now." So I did. Weeks passed, and Victor got bolder. He spray-painted an X on one neighbor's garage door. He fined an elderly couple for having non-regulation porch chairs. Everyone whispered, complained, but no one acted. That's how people like Brenda and Victor keep control. Fear is their leash. Then came the day that changed everything. I was at the hardware store when Emily called. Her voice was steady, almost too steady. "Dad," she said, "there's a man pointing a gun at me." My heart nearly stopped. "Who?" I shouted. "Victor." I don't even remember hanging up. I just remember flooring the gas pedal, racing through red lights, praying I wasn't too late. When I turned into our street, chaos was already in motion. Neighbors stood frozen on porches, phones out, recording. Some screamed, some whispered, all wide-eyed. And there he was, Victor, pacing my front yard with a pistol gripped in his hand. The black vest stretched across his chest. HOA enforcement glaring in the afternoon sun. Across from him, standing calmly on the porch steps, was Emily, my daughter, her arms loose at her sides. Her eyes locked on Victor with a focus I'd never seen before. Victor's voice cracked with rage. "This community needs order. You think you and your dad are above the rules? Not anymore. You'll be the example." My throat locked. I wanted to yell, to charge at him, but Emily's posture told me something. She wasn't afraid. Not one bit. Victor raised the pistol skyward and fired. The gunshot cracked the air. Mother screamed. Someone ducked behind a car. The smell of gunpowder burned. But Emily didn't flinch. Not even a blink. She took one step down from the porch. Her voice cut through the chaos, calm and commanding. That was a threat. And threats have consequences. Before Victor could react, she moved, faster than anyone could track. One swift motion and suddenly she wasn't empty-handed anymore. She drew her weapon, aimed with precision, and fired a single round. Victor's screams split the air as he collapsed onto the driveway, clutching his thigh. His gun spun across the concrete, useless now. The neighborhood erupted, gasps, shouts, phones zooming closer. Emily advanced, slow and steady, her weapon still trained on him. Then, with absolute calm, she reached into her jacket and pulled out a black leather wallet. With one flick, the gold letters caught the light. "Federal Bureau of Investigation," she announced, her voice razor-sharp. "Tactical Commander." A hush swept through the street. Victor writhed on the ground, cursing, trying to push himself up. Emily's boot pressed down on his shoulder, keeping him pinned like he weighed nothing. "You just committed felony impersonation," she said, her tone flat but lethal. "You discharged a firearm in a residential zone. You threatened a civilian with deadly force. Congratulations. Victor, you've stacked up federal and state charges in under 5 minutes." Phones captured every second. Brenda, standing near the back of the crowd, went pale. Her smug smirk drained as reality set in. The neighbors whispered, stunned. "She's FBI? No wonder she didn't even blink." "She saved us." I stumbled closer, still shaking, trying to process. My little girl at my quiet, reserved Emily, had just dropped the mask she'd been wearing all this time. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. Victor thought he was the law. But my daughter was the law. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Emily never moved, never lowered her weapon, never let her focus waver. She had the presence of someone who'd done this before, and that was just the beginning. The flashing red and blue lights painted the cul-de-sac in chaos as two sheriff cruisers barreled in. Deputies spilled out, weapons drawn, but froze when they saw Emily's badge gleaming in the sunlight. She didn't shout, didn't wave her gun around. She simply tilted her head toward Victor, pinned beneath her boot. "Unlawful discharge. Felony impersonation. Reckless endangerment," she said coolly. "You'll want cuffs on him now." The deputies moved fast, securing Victor as he hissed curses through clenched teeth. His fake vest, once his symbol of control, now looked pathetic under real authority. One deputy glanced up at Emily. "You FBI?" She flipped the badge again, steady and sure. "Tactical Commander. Task Force Leader. Everything he's done here is under my jurisdiction. And it's all on camera." The crowd of neighbors rippled with cheers and applause. Some cried. Some hugged each other in relief. The reign of intimidation was crumbling right before their eyes. But Emily wasn't done. Her gaze locked on Brenda Lawson, who was inching back toward her house, hoping to melt into the crowd. "Deputies," Emily commanded, her voice sharp as steel. "Stop her. She's complicit." The crowd gasped. 2 deputies moved quickly, intercepting Brenda. Her face went chalk white as they grabbed her wrists. "You can't do this!" Brenda shrieked, thrashing. "I'm the HOA president. I have rights." Emily stepped closer, her weapon finally holstered, but her presence towering over Brenda like a storm. "You authorized an unlicensed civilian to impersonate law enforcement. You funneled HOA funds into fraudulent enforcement. You conspired to harass and intimidate residents. You'll be explaining every cent and every signature to federal investigators." The neighbors erupted again, this time in raw vindication. Cheers, applause, even laughter at Brenda's downfall. "No, this is harassment!" Brenda wailed as the cuffs clicked shut. Emily tilted her head, her voice dropping into a deadly calm. "No, this is justice." The deputies led Brenda to a cruiser, her protests drowned by the roar of neighbors, who had suffered under her thumb for years. For once, the community wasn't silent. They shouted after her, their voices filled with years of pent-up rage. "Hope you like prison, Brenda? Guess beige curtains won't save you now." I stood there in awe, my chest loosening for the first time since moving to Oak Ridge Meadows. My daughter, my FBI daughter, had dismantled their empire in less than an hour. But Emily wasn't finished. She turned back to the crowd, her voice carrying with the authority of someone who'd commanded rooms, full of hardened agents. "I want every single resident who's been fined, threatened, or harassed to step forward. Deputies will take your statements. Every violation slip, every payment, every text message. We're collecting all of it. This isn't just about tonight. This is about dismantling an entire fraud operation." Neighbors surged forward, waving crumpled slips. holding phones with saved messages, even dragging out boxes of bogus HOA letters. Years of intimidation spilled out in a tidal wave. Deputies scrambled to keep up, taking evidence and statements as residents finally found their voices. Emily oversaw it all, calm and methodical. She pointed deputies to victims, collected testimony, and logged every shred of evidence. She wasn't just shutting this down, she was building a case. Victor, groaning in the back of a cruiser, tried to bark excuses. "I was just doing my job. Brenda gave me authority. This isn't my fault." Emily leaned down toward him, her eyes like ice. "No HOA has the power to arm citizens and call them police. That's not authority. That's a crime. And tonight you'll face the consequences." Victor spat on the ground. "You think you're tough because of that badge?" Emily didn't blink. "No. I'm tough because I've stared down men 10 times worse than you." And they all ended up in a cell. The crowd erupted again. This wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about reclaiming dignity. Hours later, as the cruisers pulled away with Victor and Brenda in custody, the neighborhood felt different. Lighter. Free. People lingered outside, hugging, laughing, finally able to breathe without fear of a clipboard on their porch or a vest at their door. I stood beside Emily, still reeling. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked quietly. She exhaled slowly. "Because my job isn't about titles, Dad. It's about doing the right thing when it matters. Tonight, it mattered." Her words hit me like a hammer. She wasn't hiding who she was. She was living it every day. Calm, focused, ready. The next week, Oak Ridge Meadows was turned upside down. Deputies combed through records. Federal investigators traced every dollar. Brenda had funneled through. Community fees. The HOA's so-called rules collapsed overnight. Mailboxes could stand tall again. Porch chairs reappeared. Curtains bloomed in colors that hadn't been seen in years. The best part? Residents started stepping up. No more silence. No more fear. They formed their own committee, a real one, with county registration, transparency, and elected voices. The days of Brenda's dictatorship were gone. As for Victor and Brenda, the charges stacked higher than their arrogance ever had. Felony impersonation, weapons charges, fraud, conspiracy, the list went on. The news even picked up the story. Headlines blared, "Fake HOA cop taken down by FBI tactical commander." When reporters showed up at our door, Emily didn't seek the spotlight. She gave one statement, firm and clear. "This is what happens when bullies pretend to be the law. Eventually, they meet the real one." The clip went viral. Not because it was dramatic, though it was, but because it resonated. Communities everywhere had their own Brendas, their own Victors. People saw hope in her words. For me, though, the real victory wasn't the headlines or the downfall. It was the look on Emily's face that night. Calm, steady, but finally free to be who she really was. I'll never forget standing there, watching her dismantle fear with a badge and a steady hand. My daughter, my FBI tactical commander daughter, had done more than save a neighborhood. She'd reminded all of us that courage beats intimidation every single time. And as the sun set over Oak Ridge Meadows, I realized something powerful. Fear had ruled us for years, but justice? Justice had the final word. If you enjoyed this story, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another HOA showdown. And tell me in the comments, if your HOA tried pulling this kind of stunt, what would you do?